Dr. Michael A. Brown, minister of the Westview Church of Christ. We are located in Madison, Alabama, and I'm just grateful that you've taken the time to watch this video. I have with me Dr. Natasha Williams. And Natasha, introduce yourself.
My name is Dr. Natasha Williams. I am an educator. I have been teaching 14 years, going into my 15th year of education. Last year, I completed my doctoral studies in educational leadership with a focus on how exclusionary discipline practices negatively affect minority students. I also have a passion for reading and ensuring our elementary students learn how and know how to read by the time they enter 4th grade.
So you can see my guest is well qualified. She certainly knows her business. I want to ask her some questions and invite you in on the conversation as we talk about some of the very important aspects of education and the needs that we may have as a community, the needs we may have as a country, particularly focusing on the age group Dr. Williams is more familiar with. So tell me, in your dissertation, what was the heart of the dissertation?
The heart of the dissertation was exclusionary discipline. According to research, minorities are affected by exclusionary discipline. And when I say exclusionary discipline, I mean expulsion from school, suspended from school, anything that takes them out of the classroom. Minorities are impacted by that more so than white students. And so that was the heart of my dissertation, was looking at the research surrounding that. So
elaborate a little bit more on that. When you talk about the disadvantages or the impact, the negative impact more among people of color, elaborate on that a bit further.
So when you look at minor infractions such as dress code or disrespect, minority students are suspended and expelled from school at a much higher rate than white students are. And what I found in my research was that it's a lot of cultural bias that impacts that. The majority, I think it's over 80% of teachers in America are white female, whereas the majority of students are minority students. And there's just a cultural difference when it comes to teachers and students. They're from different backgrounds, different experiences. They just come from two different walks of life. So whereas one particular behavior might not be acceptable to the teacher, may very well be acceptable in that minority's culture. And there's a disconnect there. They don't see it. They don't see the disconnect.
That's very interesting. I still want to probe a little bit further, though. When you talk about those disadvantages and how it seemingly is something that is ignored, not on purpose, but maybe just not sure or not even aware that there's a bias taking place. What impact is that on the child on a regular basis?
Well, the obvious impact on the child is if you're not in school, you're not learning. That's the most obvious impact. But according to research, there's also impact in more higher teenage pregnancies, higher instances or incidents with the judicial system, higher poverty in those students that experience more exclusionary discipline practices in elementary, middle, and high school.
Interesting. You and I talked not too long ago, and you had mentioned something about a program that had to do with incarceration, I believe. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So there is research, and it has been termed the school to prison pipeline. And so what they do is, so in education there's a term or a saying that goes like, from kinder to 3rd grade you learn how to read. So you have from kindergarten to 3rd grade to learn how to read. from fourth grade beyond, you're reading to learn.
Mm.
So they take they meaning the National Education Department looks at statistics of beginning of the year fourth grade students, and based on the number of fourth grade students that are not reading proficiently, they use that data to determine how many prisons to build.
Wow.
And prisons, as you know, are private institutes.
Mm.
So this is money making for whoever owns the prisons.
Is this something that is in particular areas? Is it more prominent, for example, in Alabama or in other states?
It's more prominent in urban areas
Mm-hmm.
in all states versus the suburban areas, which the urban areas are more populated with minorities. So it just kind of goes hand in hand.
Sounds like it's a built-in disaster.
It's a built-in disaster. In my opinion, it's a system that can easily be fixed, but they don't want to fix it.
What are some of the corrective measures to try to repair or to fix this, to change this narrative?
Well, programs that reinforce literacy, like Alabama has adopted a literacy act. It's flawed, and most programs that they do enact like that to quote unquote save or rescue or fix these problems tend to be flawed, and that one is flawed. But Mississippi has enacted a literacy act. Alabama has enacted a literacy act. Teaching children to read is how you fix the problem. But what goes hand in hand with that is classroom management, and that's where you get back to the exclusionary discipline practices. If the child is not in school, they're not learning to read, they're not learning anything. Well, you can't teach a child anything if your classroom management practices are flawed.
So let's explore that a little bit further. We talk about classroom management practices. Delve into that a little bit further. What would that incorporate?
So classroom management practices are just how you handle your classroom. It's your system for how you handle behavior, how you start your day, how you, the expectation that you set. A lot of teachers tend to have a one-size-fits-all classroom management style. And with the diversity of classrooms, there's not a one-size-fits-all classroom management style. It's best practice to kind of gauge based on your classroom, based on the needs of your classroom, and adjust based on your classroom. For example, you can't expect all kids to just sit down and be quiet because that's not their culture, that's not their nature. For example, one of the studies I was reading was in the Black community, we are used to call and response. Even at church, we're not quiet at church.
No,
we don't
want to be quiet in church.
We're used to call and response. So, give those minority students an opportunity to have call and response experiences where it's not a negative experience, which most of the time they encounter it as being a negative experience. But the Black community is not a quiet community, and that's not a negative thing. But then when they get in the classroom and they're expected to sit down and be quiet all day, then it becomes a negative experience for them.
I would think those children would feel stifled or somehow locked up.
Misunderstood. Yes.
Do these students who fit in that category, do they typically get pointed to special education?
Yes, a lot. A lot of students that either have behavior problems or learn in a different style do tend to get over-referred to special education programs. It is widely accepted in education that there are different learning styles. It's not widely accepted in the education field that there are different behavior styles.
Wow.
And classroom management styles.
That's significant.
That's significant.
Wow.
And so to me, the classroom management and learning go hand in hand. If you don't have control of your classroom, you're not going to be able to teach anybody anything.
Okay. So how do we get teachers more acclimated to be able to control their classrooms, or manage them, I should say?
It starts in the education programs in college. Unfortunately, there are no classroom management classes. I can't remember learning about classroom management when I was in college, becoming training to be a teacher. If you heard anything about it, it was embedded in another course. It needs to be its own course because it's that important. And you just don't see that. You also need courses on cultural diversity. And it doesn't need to just be talked about from a book. It needs to be experienced.
Wow. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been working in the private school industry. Do you think private schools have a better opportunity to teach these types of skills for their teachers than public schools?
I wouldn't say better opportunity. I think they're both lacking, to be honest with you. The private sector is no more better at cultural diversity than the public school is. I think there's room to grow in both sectors.
Wow. So let me ask you this. Thinking now for the moment about Christian schools, did your research find that there was the same problem taking place in Christian schools relative to teachers being better able to manage their classes?
I did talk to a few private school teachers, and they admitted that they were lacking in cultural diversity knowledge. I think as far as being able to manage classrooms, private schools do have an advantage because of smaller classroom size. That's one of the big things. I teach second grade, and I have friends that teach second grade in the public school, and my classroom max is 17 students, where their classroom max is 22 or 23 students. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah, that is very significant. So this whole idea then, it seems to me, and from what I'm hearing, it sounds like we're very quick to blame the children, when in fact we need to be looking at more strategic ways to get the teachers prepared to be able to teach those children.
Yes. It boils down to the teachers, and I hate to say, I'm not saying it's the teacher's fault, because I hate when people say it's my fault. So I'm not saying it's the teacher's fault, but I do think there needs to be more training given to the teachers to handle these situations, just based on knowledge and experience. This is just the way it happens. Most teachers come out of school and start teaching in an urban school because that's just where the needs are, that's where the openings are, that's where they land. And then they do their 2 or 3 years there, and then they move to the suburbs once they get experience. So you've got majority brand new teachers in these urban schools where you need the experienced teachers the most.
Okay. So let me ask you about this aspect of it, because I'm sure it plays a role. What about the pay for teachers? Is that a contributing factor in, I'm going to say, lack of preparation, but I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that more in the sense of opportunity.
The pay is significant. I would say teachers are about the only profession where you have to spend your own money to do your job.
I see.
And the pay is lower than most other fields. It really is a passion. If you don't have a passion for it, you're going to burn out really quickly, and most people end up quitting and going to do something else. So the pay is significant in attracting qualified teachers. Most people don't want to do it, and it's the pay, but it's also the support. The support you get from administration, the support you get from the district, that plays a big part in it too. I know I myself, and I've talked to several teachers, we don't feel supported to do our job. we're more of the scapegoat.
Do you think parental support would make a big difference, as well as administrators, but parental support?
Parental support, community support, admin support, district support, period.
Anything
yes.
you can get. Anything
Would make
you can
a
get.
huge difference, yes.
I understand. And that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, because we tend to be the scapegoat. We get blamed for everything. It's all on us. It's our fault, and it's not just, it's a village. It takes a village to educate a child just like it does to raise a child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm certainly thankful that you stopped by to share these things with us. I hope this is not the last time we get a chance to talk to you.
Yeah.
I'd like to just learn more about how we can help our communities, help our children, help our schools, help our teachers be more effective in the education, the training of our children. Our children are our future, but they are present as well, and we want to make sure that we give them everything they need as they go forward. Why don't you give, since we're about to start school again, why don't you give parents and anybody else an encouraging word about having a great 2023?
It's going to be a great year. Hopefully COVID is behind us. I think that kind of shifted education, but it's behind us. We're in this together. We can do this. And it's going to be a great year.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. We really appreciate you. Well, this is Dr. Michael A. Brown with the Westview Church of Christ signing off. We hope that you'll tune in, be with us for another installment on how we can help our children receive the greatest education that they possibly can. Goodbye for now.